It's common for most shows to have certain aspects be mysteries, some of which don't even much get solved by the end of the show. Whether an explanation is eventually given or not, fans will often come up with their own theories and explanations on why certain things are the way that they are. Sometimes they're wrong, sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're simply fan fiction or creepypasta repurposed as conspiracy theories. Nowadays, cartoon conspiracy theories have mellowed out, but way back at around 2015, 2014 or so, you'd be able to find some pretty out there shit. I'm talking Dragon Ball Z has ties to Nazis and SpongeBob is a tampon type shit. Back in the early days, theories were more out there and wide. I kinda miss it, but I'm also not particularly mad that it's gone. Today I'm gonna walk you through a few that I remember from when I was a kid, a few that creeped me out from when I was a kid, and a few that, even though I haven't run across them until now, are too wild for me to not put them in. Since I mentioned it in the intro, you might want a deeper explanation of this. Yeah, there's a theory out there that states that SpongeBob is a tampon. The more you read into it, the more explanations it starts giving for certain shit, like Gary being a meow, meow. Yeah, and because of Squidward knows, that means he's a yeah. I would fully explain it here, but YouTube would kill me if I even attempted to. So let's just move on to the next one. This next one should be pretty self-explanatory, but I'm gonna go into detail for it anyway. It basically just states that the contents of Popeye's pipe this whole time has actually been weed instead of tobacco or whatever the fuck else you put in a pipe. This theory tries to play off the whole idea that around the time that the Popeye shorts were popular, spinach was actually a very popular term used to define weed, but it also tries to say that after a certain point in the cartoons, Popeye started smoking his spinach instead of eating it, which is something that I had never heard of before and haven't heard of since. From what I can remember, from what I've heard of and what I've seen, he never actually did this. If he did, tell me, because I'm genuinely curious of where the creator of this theory got that idea. Despite that one gigantic hole in this theory, it's actually more believable than you might think. Playing off the whole thing of how spinach was a slang term used for weed back in that time period was actually a pretty smart thing to do. It also fits in with the uneducated views of weed at the time. At that time, people had no idea what weed actually did to people, so they just made shit up. They legitimately thought that weed made people super strong. It gave people this uncontrollable rage and they just needed to kill. Movies from that time period like Reefer Madness are the best example of this because they just show people who are high on weed losing their fucking minds and doing all this extra shit. Meanwhile, in real life, every stoner I know just kind of sits down and goes to sleep. All in all, while it may be more believable than most, it's still very, very, very unbelievable. It's an interesting idea though. You may remember how I brought this one up in the intro, and you most likely, just like the SpongeBob one, want a deeper explanation for it. This theory tries to tie together the Red Ribbon Army and the Super Saiyan transformation with Nazism. Even though the similarities aren't that strong, it brings up a comparison between the Red Ribbon Army and the Nazis themselves. I can only assume it's trying to compare them creating the androids as being similar to the Nazis trying to create the perfect race. Other than that, the only real comparison I can see between them would be General Blue's appearance. The other comparison it brings up is how the Super Saiyan transformation is similar to the Nazis' idea of the perfect human. Even though that doesn't make much sense because the Super Saiyan hair is gold, not blonde, and the eyes are green, not blue. It also tries to bring comparison to the words Aryan and Saiyan. This part also doesn't work because Saiyan is just a translation of the word Saiyajin, so the similarities of the words can only really be found in the English translations. In the original text, they share no similarities in the slightest. It also tries to explain Super Saiyan 4 away by saying that his hair turns black in similarities to Adolf himself. That one I feel is the part that's particularly grasping at straws. This is actually one I heard of long before I even knew conspiracy theories were a thing. My memory of the video I first saw it in is very hazy, but I can vaguely remember some of the imagery used within. The theory goes on to say that the Inspector Gadget that we see in the show isn't actually the real Gadget. The real Gadget was actually just a regular inspector who got into a freak accident one day. Presumed to be dead, they created a robot double of him. A double that would be the perfect replica of him, with a few enhancements. This double would then go on to take over the man's life. He'd take care care of his niece, and he'd take care of his dog. Both were completely unaware of what had happened to him. Over the years, the original gadget would eventually resurface. The accident didn't kill him, it just severely injured him and warped his brain. Basically, the theory tries to say that the accident turned him evil. He starts up a terrorist organization, after which he notices that there's another version of him who's completely taken over his life, is watching over his niece and his dog. Being infuriated by this, he decides to spend the rest of his life trying to get revenge on his robot counterpart and taking care to never actually hurt his niece or his dog, which is the reason why Penny and Brain get captured, but they don't really seem to ever get hurt. In fact, most of the time they end up being let go by accident. It's a fun theory, and while the movies didn't exist, I'd say it was completely unbelievable. Since they do, it's obvious that in order to make the theory, they just took the backstory from the movies, incorporated it into the cartoon, and then put their own twist on it. As a kid, I believed in this theory for a long time. It made perfect sense to me, until I ran across a picture of one of the old action figures, and it showed that Dr.claw is just some random ass old man. Big shoutouts to K-Mank and John Solo, or as I used to know him as the John Gasm. Rewatching their videos after all this time was what gave me the idea for this one in the first place. I would like to tease what the next video is gonna be about, but I haven't decided yet. That's it for this video. See you guys next time.